Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Old Time Rock and Roll. I'm your host, David Tear, where I've been featuring my personal top 3,000 songs of the rock era from 1954 to 1999. Today I'm up to song number 2754, and that one is Come Back When You Grow Up by Bobby Vee and the Strangers. This was released in 1967, and I believe it went to number three. um, and it was also released on his album of the same title, or their album of the same title. Um, anyway, I want to talk a little bit about Bobby Vee. He was the lead singer of the band. He was a pretty famous singer, I guess. But the way he got started out is a little bit interesting. He was only 15 years old. He was born in 1943 in Fargo, North Dakota. I guess he died in 2016 in Minnesota, I think. But his musical career started the day the music died. That was the day of the tragic plane crash that killed Buddy Holly along with Richie Valens and the Big Bopper. It was a private plane that crashed over Clear Lake, Iowa. I guess it was bad weather and they couldn't control the plane. And here's a picture of the plane crash. It was pretty bad. It killed everybody on board, four people altogether, the pilot as well. And it was a very tragic day in the history of rock and roll, as I'm sure you all know. I mean, Buddy Holly. I guess they were all supposed to go to this winter music festival in where was it? Moorhead, Minnesota, and of course they couldn't make it. And Bobby Vee at the last minute decided to fill in for this concert along with some high school friends of his, I guess, who were also musicians, amateur musicians. So that's kind of how he got started. And let me just go back to his picture here. You can see he was a very clean cut teenager when he started out. And he wasn't anywhere nearly as good as Buddy Holly, I don't think. And I think most people agree with us. And he was very, like I said, he was very clean cut and he had a very clean cut image. And he was the kind of teenage boy that most parents would approve of. The kind of boy that I guess if parents had a daughter and he was dating her, they'd be okay with that. And that wasn't really what rock and roll was about. I mean, see, I think a lot of people said, I've read this. I read this in the history of rock and roll that I read a book by the Rolling Stone magazine. What was kind of interesting was that, Bobby Vee was a fill in for this concert. I think there were some other fill ins. I'm not sure, but it was supposed to be a big music festival in Minnesota. And I think there were some other musicians that filled in for the other guys who died, Richie Valens and the Big Bopper. And they were all kind of clean cut, like Bobby Vee. And it was kind of symbolic of what happened to rock and roll after the day the music died. I mean, rock and roll did kind of die for a while. I mean, it got very clean cut. It kind of lost its rebellious nature of the mid to late 50s, I think. And it took the Beatles to revive that, I think. For the most part. I mean, that's probably a gross oversimplification. There was obviously some other very good music in the early 60s, like a lot of Motown, and, Elvis was still going strong, and then there was the girl groups and the surf sound of, Southern California and all that. But I think the whole spirit of rock and roll kind of went downhill. And Bobby Vee kind of epitomized that, I think, in my opinion. He's not one of my favorite artists. But he was very popular for several years in the late 50s and early 60s. And I'm just going to go through his hits. So I guess I'm just going to go through his top 40 hits. His first top 40 hit was in 1960, was called Devil or Angel. That went to number six. After that, he had a song called Rubber Ball, which also went to number six, not to be confused with Red Rubber Ball by The Circle, which was written by Paul Simon, which I think is a much, much better song. 1961, he had a song called Staying In, which went to number 33. Then later that year, he had his only number one hit called "Take Good Care of My Baby." I believe that was written by Carole King. Um, Later that year, he had "Run to Him," which went to number two. In '62, he had "Please Don't Ask About Barbara," which went to number 15, and "Sharing You," which also went to number 15. In 1962, had a song called "Punisher." I've never heard this one. This one went to number 20. I hope it wasn't condoning punishing his girlfriend for misbehaving or something. I mean, I think there was a lot of that going on at that time. But I've never heard this song, so maybe I'm just misjudging it. Later that year, he had one of my favorite songs of his, probably my favorite of his. "The Night Has a Thousand Eyes." That one went to number three. I actually read something interesting about this song. "The Night Has a Thousand Eyes," along with "Take Good Care of My Baby." I think those were Bobby V's two favorite songs. And he said he knew they were both going to be huge hits. He said they sounded like they came out of a musical play, like a Broadway musical, and they do kind of sound that way if you listen to them. I think especially "The Night Has a Thousand Eyes." Very cheerful song. 1963, he had a song called "Charms," which went to number 13. He had "Be True to Yourself," which went to number 34. 1960, I guess he had a hiatus for about 4 years, which isn't too surprising because, like I said, 64 was the year the Beatles came out, Beatlemania, British Invaders. That was kind of the second big wave of rock and roll. And I guess Bobby Vee wasn't very, he didn't really ride that wave very well. But he did have, I guess, his last top 10 in '67, "Come Back When You Grow Up," the one I'm featuring today. That went to number three. He also had a song called "Beautiful People," which went to number 37. And his last top 40 hit was in 1968. It was a medley of "My Girl" and "Hey Girl." And those were both covers. "My Girl" was originally done by the Temptations. I'm not sure who did "Hey Girl." Might have been Little Anthony and the Imperials or something. But that went to number 35. Those were his hits. Those were his top 40 hits. Like I said, not one of my favorite artists. And, the song I'm featuring today, "Come Back When You Grow Up," not one of my favorite songs. I mean, it did make my list, but one of the songs about, he has a girlfriend who he thinks isn't really, he's too young for her, not mature enough, maybe he's afraid he's going to go too far with her. Kind of like "Young Girl." "Young Girl" is another song that has kind of the same message. I think "Young Girl" is a better song, though. But anyway, that's my feature on "Come Back When You Grow Up" by Bobby Vee. Anyway, that concludes my video for today. Thank you for watching. You guys rock, and I'll see you next time.